The H1B Guy here, and today, the H1B Guy news for the week ending October 23rd, 2020. But before we get started, I'd like to ask you, if you haven't already, to please subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube. It helps me to produce more content like this for you. I also wanted to mention that the H1B Guy offers a variety of consulting services. Whether I can help you or your employer understand your case, please reach out. I'd love to hear how I can help. I also wanted to say thanks to everyone who took the time to join the H1B Guy Live unedited and unscripted Q&A 5 yesterday. I just really enjoyed doing those live streams and interacting with all of you. Thank you. Now, the news. I really hate starting out this episode with bad news, but I wanted to mention the passing of two more Indian nationals that were living and working in the U.S. on H-1B visas. Raghunath Mayalavaram, a Bay Area resident from Andhra Pradesh, India, worked at Palo Alto Networks, passed on October 15th. There is a GoFundMe that's set up for Raghu. I will share that link in the description of this video. And I also wanted to mention Swaran Pradeep Chandran from Southfield, Michigan, a resident from Chennai, India, who worked at the state of Michigan as an SAP consultant, who also passed on October 15th. There is also a GoFundMe that's set up for Swaran, and I will share that in the link of the description. I just mentioned this because these are two individuals who came to the U.S. pursuing their American dream, and now will be leaving, to go back to their home country, really to be buried, right? And are left with family, spouse, and children that are here in the U.S., and just the economic and financial hardship that it creates around these families. Just very sad. So I wanted to use my voice in the platform here to give them an in memoriam. Moving on, October 18th, 2020, in an article written by Neil Monroe for Breitbart titled, "One in Four Democrats Favor Hiring Foreign Workers Over Americans." Quote, "One in four Democrats and liberals say it's better for the government to bring in new foreign workers to help keep business costs and prices down," an October poll by Rasmussen Reports reveals. Rasmussen's results suggest that Democrats and liberals are 2 times more likely than conservatives to favor an inflow of cheap and compliant foreign labor to U.S. companies, despite evidence of much economic damage to other Americans. On the flip side, almost 74% of Republicans and conservatives said it would be better for businesses to raise the pay and try harder to recruit non-working Americans, even if it causes prices to rise. That view was held by just 56% of Democrats and 55% of liberals. Almost 40% of Democrats and liberals picked increased the number of foreign workers taking higher skill U.S. jobs. Only half as many, just 20% of conservatives and Republicans favored more foreign workers. Fewer than half of all liberals, 45%, and Democrats, 48%, favored the alternative answer. The country already has enough talented people to train and recruit for most of those jobs. But that answer was picked by 71% of Republicans and conservatives. Migration moves money from employees to employers, from families to investors, from young to old, from home buyers to real estate investors, and from the central states to the coastal states. Migration allows investors and CEOs to skimp on labor-saving technologies, sideline U.S. minorities, disregard workplace discrimination rules, ignore disabled people, exploit stoop labor in fields, shortchange labor in the cities, impose tight control on American professionals, centralize technological innovation, and undermine many types of labor rights. I've covered a few of Neil's articles before. As is evident in this piece, he does not hide his personal or political affiliations or hatred for skilled immigrants. I wanted to share this article, though, to mention some of Rasmussen's research data. The one data point that really stuck out to me was 48% of Democrats and 71% of Republicans feel, quote, "the country already has enough talented people to train and recruit for most of those jobs." Those jobs meaning white collar. He closes the article by making several inaccurate claims as to why migration is bad in general. While I disagree with most of what he says, I do agree with the fact that it allows CEOs to skimp on labor-saving technology, specifically by not hiring an American-based resource and outsourcing that role to Canada, Mexico, India, Philippines, China. You get the point. October 20th, 2020. In an article written by PTI for the Economic Times titled U.S. Chambers of Commerce and NAM file lawsuits against recent H-1B regulations. Quote, the U.S. Chambers of Commerce, the National Association of Manufacturers, and several other organizations have filed a suit against the federal government asserting that recent H-1B regulations will undermine high-skilled immigration into the United States. Filed on Monday in the Northern District of Columbia, the lawsuit alleges that harmful and haphazard rules on H-1B visas, if left in place, would affect hundreds of thousands of American-based workers and disrupt manufacturers' ability to hire and retain critical high-skilled talent. We need skilled, high-skilled innovators now more than ever, and the administration's attempt to rush these rules forward without properly considering their impact on thousands of people on the front lines of developing vaccines and treatments and making critical supplies, as well as saving lives in our hospitals, could have devastating consequences at a critical moment in our history, said NAM Senior Vice President and General Counsel Linda Kelly. Rewriting laws through a dark of night style rulemaking leads to dangerous policy outcomes, and this pair of interim final rules is an illegal attempt to dismantle legal immigration by rendering the H-1B visa program unworkable for hundreds of thousands of American-based workers who are essential to the recovery and renewal of the industry and the economy, Kelly said. As I mentioned yesterday on the H1B Guy Live, unedited and unscripted Q&A 5, the U.S. Chambers of Commerce and National Association of Manufacturers filed this lawsuit on Monday. Since the release of the H1B IFR, all signs pointed to multiple lawsuits challenging this rule. The interesting part about the U.S. Chambers of Commerce and NAM being named as plaintiffs in this lawsuit is that they were plaintiffs in the lawsuit that successfully had the travel ban restrictions rescinded in San Francisco's federal district court. Both organizations account for over 14,000 employers. I'm expecting they've prepared a very strong case, and it will be very interesting to see the timing on when it will be heard in the courts. October 20th, 2020. In an opinion article written by the editorial board for Bloomberg titled, Trump's H-1B reforms will make America poorer. Quote, the administration expects the changes to reduce demand for the H-1B visas by 1/3 and sees this as a triumph for U.S. workers. In fact, it's a defeat. The third quarter unemployment rate for programmers was 2.9% compared to 8.8% for all workers, and vacancies in the sector are up 4.7% since April. These jobs increase consumer demand and help companies expand by filling critical roles. In other words, skilled immigrants spur growth and help create jobs for American workers. U.S. based startups that rely on skilled immigrants for IT services will outsource more tasks to workers outside of the U.S. And in the midst of a pandemic, the changes will worsen shortages of healthcare workers. The new policy requires all medical professionals on H-1B visas to be paid at least $208,000, regardless of specialty or experience. For many clinics and hospitals in underserved areas, that's unaffordable. Congressional leaders should also insist on closer scrutiny and remind the administration that far reaching changes to immigration laws should be carried out through legislation, not executive fiat. The most important point is the simplest. The strongest possible U.S. economic recovery requires more talent drawn from the rest of the world, not less. A smart immigration system would recognize this fact and, in that way, advance the interests of all Americans. I've been very vocal about this But STEM jobs increase consumer demand, spur growth, and create jobs for American workers. While there is a small minority that will dispute this fact, the proof is in the unemployment percentages amidst the pandemic. Less than 3% for Q3, with vacant programmer roles up 4.7% since April. I've covered and discussed H1B medical professionals a good bit over the last month. I'm not sure, but does the $208,000 annual salary also apply to H1B RNs? Let's think about the small clinics in rural America that do not have the revenue to account for a 30% increase for their only physician. So how do we advance American interest? I know that we won't advance American interest by increasing wage levels for H1Bs to the percentages that are being proposed. I know that making those that live and work in the US on legal employment based visas feel unwelcome isn't going to advance American interest either. Let's hope we wake up and realize that this is a war we will lose if we do not make changes to our current immigration system. For the full post on the H1B Guy news for the week ending October 23rd, 2020, please check out the H1BGuy.com. If you haven't already, I'd like to ask you to please like this video, subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube, and click the bell for notifications so that you're notified anytime we post a new video here on this channel. If you've made it this far, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to watch my content. I just really appreciate your support. The H1B Guy, your global source for all things H1B.